11. Modernity and development on the ancient town. Since the time of the conquest, the Catholic dead were buried around the San Antonio Temple, which is why it was called a holy cemetery. However, in 1833, a smallpox epidemic struck Huatusco, so much so that coffins paraded one after another. This forced them to look for a new, distant location. This was to the south along a street that connected to the temple. It was a large expanse, walled with solid lime and a wrought iron gate, requiring an expansion in 1880. Since the temple was far away, they decided to build a humble stone and wood temple in 1860, which lasted nearly 100 years until it almost completely deteriorated. Father Enrique Trejo intervened, arranging the construction of a new temple and inviting the Huatusco architect Rafael Pacheco Lopez, who created a very modernist proposal for his time, even for the current ones. This work is thanks to the financial support of Miss Carmen Gomez and her family. This sanctuary is 100% Huatusqueño, as everything from its design to its workmanship and materials were sourced from this land. Inside, it features equally modernist ironwork with a cubist essence and an image of the Lord of the Sanctuary from the year 1800, from which this temple takes its name. After the cinema stopped showing due to the closure of the theater, the Cinema Huatusco was improvised in 1959 in a garage driven by Mr. Leocadio Bibriesca, in a house on Avenue 1, while a large project was being planned by Mr. Rubian Nieva Zuculodo, who envisioned a worthy cinema for the families of Huatusco, asking architect Rafael Pacheco to participate in the project, and he carried out a modern work, planning a cinema with the functional structure of a theater, with Don Felipe Jimenez as the foreman. Building a large cinema even though Don Rubian tried to buy more land and was only sold part of what he requested, which is why it was left a little small but very well equipped, with Dutch systems and air conditioning, culminating in a first-class marble facade. It was originally called Cinema Huatusco, but over the years, Don Rubian decided to call it Cine Olga, in honor of his daughter, who later took over the business with her brother, who sourced the films in Mexico City, until they decided to close in 1987 due to the influx of cassette and video centers. In 1968, the Olympic flame was lit in Greece on August 23, destined to travel the route that Christopher Columbus traced on his first voyage to the New World, traveling through Greece, Italy, and Spain. He embarked for San Salvador and from there arrived in Veracruz on October 6, traveling through important cities, including Huatusco. On October 8 at 3 p.m., he arrived in the city, accompanied by young athletes. Leoncio Guerrero Ruiz, Francisco, and Sergio Vasquez, who were great emblems of the sport of the time, along with Solomon Vasquez, who was in charge of the logistics of the journey. In Huatusco, the sporting boom was growing and athletics was very important since races and even relays were held, and also during the Guadalupe festivities races were held, and one of them consisted of a route to the basilica. Little by little the fervor for running decreased as soccer, baseball and basketball were introduced with greater force. In 1910, on the occasion of the centennial of Mexico's independence, a roundabout with masonry benches was built to beautify the parkway. It was inaugurated by Governor Teodoro A. de Giza, bearing his name. However, due to the revolutionary conflicts, both the parkway and the roundabout were left in ruins and forgotten for many years until 1942, when reconstruction work began under the direction of Representative Manuel Mata, with Rafael Gomez as municipal president and with the support of citizens and businesses. In 1957, fairs and various activities were held for its reconstruction under Leonardo Muñoz González's presidency, gradually implementing more sports and recreational areas. After the independence eras, schools were promoted, emerging the Cantonal School in 1894, later derived from this the Adolfo Ruiz Cortines, which, due to improvements and political changes, became the Miguel D. Cabañas Primary School in 1974, which together with the Juana de Asbaje Morning School and the Dr. Dario Mendez Lima Secondary School, founded in 1947 in its first stage, are the most emblematic, founded on the efforts of teachers, who despite not having adequate facilities and sufficient resources, still generated the means to teach classes, often without receiving a salary, and some others even supporting with their own resources altruistically, all for the good of education and youth. Likewise, in the following years, the Telesecundaria was founded in 1968, the Bachiller Huatusco in 1978, and in 1979 the ESC. Sec. Yvita Lara Estrada was born, with Dr. Gonzalo Aguirre Beltran as delegate of the SEV, who through the request made by his daughter Matilda Beltran and the donation of a hectare by her husband Don David Nieva Sampiri. They obtained the school key and Doña Matilda, better known as Doña Tita, proposed to name it after the MTRA. Yvita Lara, a native of Morelos, for her great work in Huatusco since her arrival in 1942. She later moved to the home of Doña Benita Vega, who donated it to benefit children and education, founding her school, La Corregidora de Querétaro, in 1943. Upon her retirement, the school became a boarding school for girls, later becoming Colegio Mexico. An earthquake later forced them to move their location. Over time, the private secondary school, 5 de Febrero, opened there in austere conditions in 1974, eventually becoming the COBAEV High School and moving to a new location. With the rise of the entire basic school staff, it began to be managed since 1975 thanks to the natural conditions of Huatusco and the impetus of Mr. Ramiro Garcia Vasquez, a native of Huatusco and recent graduate of the UACH, who proposed to the director of the INA, Mr. Rogelio Posadas, to bring the institution to these lands, to which the agricultural sector of Huatusco responded with acceptance. Although with many difficulties, but in the end it was possible to obtain a land of hectares in Tlaxopan, which in an act of altruism, Mr. Benjamin Avendaño sold to the municipality at a low cost, as long as the project was continued, and in the end the municipality donated it to the Autonomous University of Chapingo and founded the CRUO in Huatusco in 1979 and gradually began its architectural growth. Prior to this university that studied the coffee phenomenon, the INMECAFE institution arrived in Huatusco, which emerged at a national level to provide the producer with technological knowledge for coffee production, since derived from the effects of the revolution and the agitatorio distribution processes. Most of the owners kept land, but without knowing how to exploit it to export abroad and thus improve the economy, previously having in charge in 1948 the National Coffee Commission, which was not sufficient or had a profile of knowledge of the field, which generated the need for an institution like INMECAFE, to regulate production and conservation with a position of support for the coffee producer and also the care of the land. Veracruz, Chiapas and Oaxaca being the largest producers in Mexico, and Huatusco is part of that coffee axis, which is why INMECAFE was founded in 1958 along with the BEMEX Commission that focuses on the innovation of the benefits. Arrive in Huatusco around 1963 and already in the 1980s, due to the importance of this city in production, one of the 17 delegations was assigned here in 1985, generating international agreements that benefited the region. However, due to a frost in 1989, this institution went bankrupt at the national level, having to close in 1993. Apart from coffee, the economy was supported by local commerce, in the old stone market, which was a single floor and extended from sidewalk to sidewalk with people working since 4 in the morning, until a serious accident occurred where it burned down in the 1970s, which prompted the construction of a new market. Mr. Enrique Paez was president. Motivated by the CTM Commission led by Don Emilio Beristain Gonzalez, he managed and began the work, dismantling stone by stone. However, the budget was not enough and the change of government crossed, with Professor José Luis Zúñiga taking over, who finished the work with private funds lent by Doña Gabriela Gomez, wife of Don Vicente Acosta, completed the Benito Juárez market in 1974 for about 3 years. Despite not respecting the original project and leaving several merchants out, the market managed to operate and survive. Another important building for the entire population is the Municipal Palace, built at the initiative of Mr. Alberto Pesado, who used it as a commercial building, like other hacienda-style buildings. It was originally a single-story building, also serving as a warehouse, shop, stables, and other facilities. Over time, he decided to donate part of the property to the municipality and rent the rest as a residential home. Another space was also used as a jail. Huatusco was also established through expropriations during the North American invasion, when it temporarily became the state capital. Municipal power gradually expanded through the purchase of the remaining spaces until its expansion in 1973 during the mayoralty of President Enrique Paez Quezada, serving entirely as the Municipal Palace. In 1985, to commemorate the 175th anniversary of independence, instead of exhibiting Hidalgo's remains, it was proposed to display the symbols that represented the ideals of independence to reinforce patriotic fervor, choosing the Bell of Dolores, a flag in the 1917 Constitution, undertaking a long journey on a van, traveling through various towns in the country, initiating the Jornadas por la Patria. Arriving in Huatusco on July 19 and traveling through the main avenues protected by the National Guard, carrying out a civic act in Zaragoza Park and leaving a commemorative plaque of the passage of the patriotic symbols. Modernity has changed the culture, economy, and architecture, transforming old 19th-century buildings like the Municipal Palace. Due to population growth and institutional needs, the palace has been growing and changing. The jail and police station have been moved to the rear of the palace. Later, in 2019, Mayor Zaira Ochoa Valdivia arranged for the renovation and expansion of the palace's offices and fronton, creating a continuous second floor housing all municipal departments. In the past, bands from the region would play in Zaragoza Park in front of the Municipal Palace. Near the kiosk, they would gather to play traditional balsamics, polkas, and other traditional music of the time that reached the town. Since the 17th century, Huatusco and its musicians have been protected by Saint Cecilia, its patron saint. Likewise, as part of traditional folklore, Churreria saw Huatusco become a city and gradually develop into a strong cultural activity, with formal regulations. The Asociación de Charros de Huatusco was formed in 1937, thanks to the initiative of a group led by Mr. Manuel Raceros, who was also mayor of the city. This group made tours from the rodeo through the main avenues and later held a dance attended by wealthy families on September 14, Charro Day, and May 5. As a result, the escaramuces, skirmishes, were generated in 1986, where the wives of the representatives of the association participated, and children's skirmishes were also held, beautifying the lienzo charro canvas, between tricks and tours. Amid its cultural, social, and economic growth, Huatusco has never left behind the vendors. In the past, even before the market, they came from the surrounding villages to sell their wares on the sidewalk. They have remained a part of the Huatuscan image to this day, refusing to negotiate any relocation, as if they were a natural part of the street, once made of dirt, then of stone, and now of cement. Meanwhile, in some homes in the mid-20th century, literary gatherings were held, where poetry, music, wine, and friendship were shared amidst political discussions and sports opinions, as sports were beginning to become a part of the scene. Soccer first arrived in Veracruz, with the English and Italians being the first to play at the port, arriving in Huatusco. Those from above played in the Alameda, tree-lined avenue, and those from below played in the Galito, rocket-shaped field. Around the 1960s, the Cafeteros team, created by Don Manuel Cedes Rincon, was one of the first formal teams. Just like soccer, baseball was formed as a great sporting tradition. The Guanos team was owned by a fertilizer company of the same name. As a more recent, but equally ancient sport, basketball arrived, creating the BENV Pirates team in 1962. Apart from the sports clubs that were formed, also on a social and intellectual level, they created clubs like El Rotario, which consisted of bringing together citizens of various professions, with the intention of generating ideological exchanges, arriving in Huatusco since 1935 approximately, meeting at the Hotel Casino, in front of the Chalet Landa. At the same time, the Lions Club arises, with which there was some rivalry with the Rotarians from its origins, for being more open and democratic, while the Lions were more hermetic. And as a symbol, the members had to roar in their sessions when they participated. Said club was characterized by having members of a high economic and cultural level, acting as a social organization for the benefit of society of low socioeconomic level without pursuing any profit, having several aid programs at the same time. Later in 1982, the Panamericanas Club arrives, which was exclusively for women, giving them possession from Córdoba. Mrs. Rosario Barragan, originally from Huatusco, which left the authority to the founder Professor Angelina Cedes, among the founders headed, the chemist and Professor Blanquita Olguin, as well as, the Professor Rosa Crivelli. Forming the first group of 22 members, with sponsorship from the city of Mendoza on March 25, said association met in the Lions Club Hall, and its main functions were similar to those of the Rotary Club and Lions Club, but they also created cultural events and exhibited about the origin of each of the world's flags. Amidst all the modernity and cultural changes, the Catholic religion has endured. Thanks to the participation of parishioners and the community's financial contributions, and with the support and efforts of Mayor Miguel Cedes Castro, at the beginning of the 21st century, a 30-meter-high Virgin Mary was commissioned, joining the select group of the country's largest Virgin Marys. It was erected in 2013 and has since been visited by thousands of devotees and tourists, primarily on December 12, the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Another ancient Mexican festival, but recent in Huatusco, as it is a pre-Hispanic tradition originating in the Huasteca, is the Xantolo, derived from the Huastecs who arrived at Panuco, relating to the Mayans, merging customs from the north and south. They arrived in past centuries to this land, Huatusco being at some point a Huasteca area, but later tribes mostly Nahua arrived. And for this reason Professor Gerardo Huerta Colorado, thanks to his passion for folkloric, native and mestizo dances, incorporates the Xantolo dance, or rather, Viejada de Tempal, in the presentations of the magisterial ballet to close their functions. Noticing the acceptance of the public, decides together with Emtro, Enrique Romero, the MTRA, Yolanda de Menegui and Mr. Abel Vasquez, founders of the ballet, transformed it into a grand parade, which initially featured only 20 masked performers, arousing curiosity and surprise. It began in 2007 and steadily grew year after year, becoming a grand parade filling the streets of Todos Santos with color. Along with the display of altars on the ground floor of the Municipal Palace, which the Pan American Club has organized and promoted since 1984. They joined the Xantolo project, but in keeping with the Jarocho tradition with which the ballet began. Since 2019, they have been taking to the streets to dance the sun, filling the streets with comparses, comedies, dancing zones along the entire length of the main avenues, thus creating the Masivo Jarocho. Also, as a preservation of culture and the renovation of the plaza and the Church of Santa Cecilia, it was devised to create a large mural of 258 meters behind the Juarez Market in order to beautify the plaza, being the year 2020 when the restoration work and talks with the artist Franco Santilla, Mayor Baldinucci Colorado and Congressman Miguel Castro began, both offering full support and openness for said mural. While Franco Santilla proposed making a sculpture based on one of the most important symbols of Huatusco, creating a modern proposal, aestheticizing the form, representing a young and serene rabbit, called Tosh, which derives from the legend that Emtro Miguel Ángel Flores wrote about the origin of Cuataco, which speaks of a rabbit on the Acatepec hill. Likewise, the mural's theme was created as an offering to coffee, the foundation of the Huatusco economy, where we all benefit, directly or indirectly. Therefore, the mural is titled, Fruit of Life. It was held from August 19 to October 19, 2021. As part of the renovation, the project involved collaboration with architect Octavio Perez Cecilia, thus completing a major project for society. In 2019, the Casa de los Leones had a new owner. It was acquired by Mr. Arturo Pinto Granados, who, interested in the rescue, conservation, and preservation of Huatusco's historical, architectural, and cultural legacy, undertook a restoration and remodeling project. He created spaces for the exhibition of the various art collections it houses, which he seeks to share with children, adolescents, youth, and the general public, not only in this city but also throughout the state, the country, and the world, giving Huatusco a unique venue of high cultural value.